Hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about stuff. Don't forget to leave a like, and thank you to everyone who leaves a comment every single video, as it does help out with the algorithm. I do not think, first of all, this is going to be a very different video, and I don't think that this is a real conversation that people are ready to have yet because of the structure of the way that finance is, the way that it works, and what we've been told all of our lives. I need to say that beforehand before I start saying really insane stuff. One of the ideas of Bitcoin, and I would say the entire crypto space, but let's focus on Bitcoin here, has to do with the idea of Bitcoin at some point in the generalized future taking over the market cap of gold. It's like literally at the forefront of what a lot of people think is going to make Bitcoin succeed or become more popular essentially in the eyes of billions of people. The last number that we heard was around 800,000, but I assume that number has scooched up a bit as gold has been rallying based off of all of the economic stuff that we're currently going through. One of the ideas is that as Bitcoin gets scarcer and becomes more of an asset that people are holding, similar to gold, in essence, Bitcoin's price will rise. As Bitcoin's price rises, it gains more attention, and the media and public and other people begin to buy it. But at some point, analysts believe that when Bitcoin officially passes by the entire valuation of the gold market, that people will basically begin to forego gold. One of the things that we started hearing about around 2020, 2021 was that eventually we would start seeing hedge funds and other companies beginning to sell off their gold and actually using that money, those proceeds, to buy Bitcoin. That began to happen when we started to hear that a number of companies were actually selling off like some of their like paper gold or their like gold ETFs. They were using some of that money to enter the Bitcoin ETF market. That also began to change when we started hearing about a number of other banks also getting into the space as well, and the rumors that we were hearing is that they were getting rid of it. And then we started hearing from BlackRock that at some point it was going to completely eclipse the entire valuation of gold as well. This, for a lot of people, signals, or for Bitcoin maximalists who said it years ago, would basically signal the end of gold. Like I said, this is not a conversation that a lot of people are actually willing to have, and I think in any capacity until like it actually ends up getting real. The idea would be people who hold gold or invest in gold would eventually come to the realization that they kind of missed out. If Bitcoin goes to 10 cents to $5, that's a healthy profit right there. But people holding gold, they can simply say, well, beginner's luck. If Bitcoin goes from $5 to $1,000, it looks like Bitcoin might actually do something, but each piece of gold, an ounce of gold, is $2,000. It's nowhere near the actual price of it. I remember when Bitcoin went past the actual valuation of 1 ounce of gold, and the discussion then became, back then in 2017, could Bitcoin actually pass by the market cap of gold entirely? That was a huge, gigantic thing because people were like, no, of course not. You would need a multi-trillion-dollar Bitcoin market. Bitcoin can never actually get there. When the Bitcoin ETFs launched within the United States, one of the main discussions was, if you remember, this was the beginning of 2024, is that the Bitcoin ETFs had actually outdone every single ETF I think that year or that had ever been created. I don't remember the exact wording of whatever it was, but the point is that after 3 months, it had completely decimated every other. It was like 10,000 ETFs or something like that. Even if you actually look at the chart for Bitcoin's ETF versus gold, we're about like 12 years ahead of where we would normally be if we follow the trajectory of gold itself. One of the predictions is that basically people would come to the realization that gold is just a metal. I know a lot of people like gold and like silver. I'm not trying to knock it. I'm just giving you the idea of what is being presented and what's probably going to end up happening if the Bitcoin maximalists' predictions actually end up coming true. It would kind of go like this from this point on. If Bitcoin passes the valuation of gold entirely, people who hold gold would kind of go, all right, I'll get rid of a smidge of my gold just because I want to see if Bitcoin can continue to outperform it. People would realize, in essence, the 50 cents to $5 to $1,000 to $2 was their chance a long time ago to get in, and now they have to try and get in now. Bitcoin goes to $1.6 million. These people have doubled their money. Gold has not doubled in the exact same time. This is also, like I said, when we had this conversation before, this was maybe a year or two ago, even before the ETF thing. We were trying to discuss and go over the fact that Bitcoin had already, like mathematically, not like joking, not like, oh, wishful thinking, since its inception, had already gone up by millions of %. And this is why they have those charts. If you look like Bitcoin versus gold chart, you'll see that gold's price has, I think, doubled in the last 15 years or so, while Bitcoin has gone up by millions of %. This would eventually lead to a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin, people foregoing gold, and basically the valuation of gold would go down, which would also should technically then decrease the actual cost of brand new phones as they need gold inside of them. A lot of people are using gold as a way to store value because it's what we've had for the last couple thousand years. This transitions into, for those of you who also missed that video, this was maybe 2 months ago, the CEO of BlackRock, his name is Larry Fink, said something, and it made a lot of people not annoyed, but people, when something hasn't happened yet, people tend to be incredibly skeptical. Larry Fink said he thinks that within the next 15 to 20 years, keeping in mind that Bitcoin has been around for roughly 15 years as well, he thinks within the next 15 to 20 years that Bitcoin is going to eclipse the entire valuation of real estate within the United States. I'm sure some of you remember me saying those exact words. The idea would be the entire valuation of U.S. real estate right now is roughly around $50 trillion. The idea, geez Louise, then becomes, if Bitcoin's price keeps rising higher and higher and eclipses the entire valuation of all real estate within the United States of America, this would also set off another thing as far as people getting rid of their gold. Would people begin to get rid of their real estate? One of the key, and I listen, I understand the skepticism, but here's how it actually would work. Bitcoin is deflationary. The US dollar and every other fiat currencies, they are inflationary. The idea is the United States dollar will continue to lose value for the rest of forever as long as we actually have the dollar. Same with the euro, same with the yen. There's no real specialty to them except that they were printed by the government and we were told to actually use them for commerce. On the other side, Bitcoin is incredibly finite. So technically, as long as more money gets printed, that money will flow into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price will go higher. We have the halvings, what have you. Bitcoin's price continues to rise relative to the valuation of actual fiat currencies. This is why we had the discussion that the US dollar lost 99% of its value to Bitcoin over the course of a decade. Not 2 decades, not 5 decades, over the course of a 10-year period. What happens is, or what would happen would be, is that basically the more Bitcoin you have, the richer you get. Got it. The more Bitcoin you have, the less, how do I say this in like a very like easy fashion? Basically, we will continue to see prices rising higher. So like the TV that you want to buy is $1,000. Next year, a couple years later, because of inflation, it's $1,200, $1,500 as new televisions come out. Relative to the amount of Bitcoin that you have, prices have actually lowered. So therefore, the more Bitcoin that you have and the more Bitcoin that you're holding on to in the future, not only the richer you will be, but also the less incentivized that you will actually be to get rid of that Bitcoin. If you know that every year money printing causes Bitcoin's valuation to rise higher, then what does that say about every other asset? We know that mathematically, if you have more Bitcoin and the valuation of Bitcoin compared to the dollar goes up, therefore, the thing that you wanted to buy relative to the amount of the same exact Bitcoin that you have, that other thing is then worth less and you don't have to spend as much Bitcoin to actually buy that thing. There's an article on Forbes, and this is like I said from the beginning, it was going to get a bit crazy. There's an article on Forbes, and they actually mentioned it's called Bitcoin or real estate. And they went over this idea in multiple different factions of what we think an investment actually is. So I'll say from this standpoint, we've always been told, I was told when I was younger, that bonds were a good investment. It was the thing that we kept on hearing in the news, and then you find out that the bond market is also like a little bit janky. And then you get into the stocks and you realize that stocks also aren't the safest thing in the entire world, depending on economic factors, what have you. When you get to the point when it comes to real estate, there's also two separate parts there as well. You have residential, where people sleep, and then you have commercial, where people have shops. That also took a bit of a hit a couple of years ago because commercial real estate was always seen as like one of the people will always have jobs. There will not be AI. Companies will always need a place to set up shop. There will always be companies. In 2020, that completely collapsed. You remember all the stores and cafes and restaurants and everything that were closed. That then shifts the focus over to like rental, as in like, putting someone inside of it and they sleep there at night. The crazy part about the Forbes article is that they mentioned a couple of historic events that took place over the course of the last 2 years, especially where we found out that a number of people in California and other places were no longer eligible for their insurance. So the real estate, it even says it inside the actual thing. These people were told to buy real estate because it was something that would last them for generations. So you pass down the house, you pass down the house, you pass down the house. One day it's gone. The insurance company is like, I can't help you. And then they go on to talk about the idea of Bitcoin as not only a hedge, but also this idea of Bitcoin's physicality, but non-physicality. This is why you've seen such a huge, gigantic push over the last couple of years by companies like Coinbase to have some kind of like a custody solution for these very wealthy people. The idea being is that the idea of what we think of as wealth and what we think of as tangible assets will eventually completely change. It's kind of like similar to the idea of NFTs. A lot of people laughed at them or made fun of them, but now they're still really big, but that's another topic of discussion. Similar to the internet, when the internet first started, you've seen the old videos from the 90s, like early 92, 93, these people are on the news and the guy's like, what's an email? And then someone like explains it to him. He goes, can't we just write physical letters? That guy looks crazy now because we understand what the digital like world actually means, even though we can't actually physically touch it. One of the core ideas of the original Bitcoin maximalists from many, many moons ago is that eventually, as Bitcoin's price, similar to passing by the valuation of gold, if Bitcoin's price eventually passes by the valuation of a single family home, and this is around the idea of a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 Bitcoin. I know homes can cost millions or less, but we're not talking about that right now. One of the ideas is that once Bitcoin English passes by the valuation of a single family home within the United States, the idea of owning real estate kind of goes, well, Bitcoin really has, I don't have to do anything for it or with it. It simply just sits there. That's also one of the other ideas about Bitcoin staking that we've been also going over every like 10th video or something. There's some kind of like a Bitcoin staking thing for those of you who don't know. You know how like you can stake Ether, you can stake Cardano. A lot of developers are working on like actually being able to stake Bitcoin. So one of two ways, either on chain or through another chain. Basically some kind of a DeFi thing where you can essentially lock up your Bitcoin in the Ethereum blockchain into some DeFi protocol and make a guaranteed return every single year of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% on your money. Essentially meaning you would be able to you buy Bitcoin. This is why I think we're seeing all of it being purchased so quick, because these protocols are being created right now and that they're going to be a mainstream in 10 years. It'll just simply be commonplace. You buy Bitcoin and you hold on to it. It goes to the valuation of an entire home. You lock it into a protocol. You're making more money than you would have made from that real estate without doing absolutely nothing. You don't have to find anyone. You don't have to put someone in the home. You don't have to hope that they actually pay your rent as well. The other one is actually Bitcoin doing it on chain as well, which would probably involve some kind of a stable coin that basically you would lock your Bitcoin up further, making it scarce inside the network. And therefore, by securing it on chain even further, basically saying, I don't plan on spending this Bitcoin anytime soon. You would be rewarded in that actual stable coin, similar to like staking as well. But that's going to be a major thing. And this is what I think a lot of people in retail missed out on and don't really care about. We have this thing where you can become as distracted as possible. People get into meme coins. They get into other coins that actually have no real value and no real partnerships and no real actual future. Because the valuation and price of Bitcoin, if you tell someone to buy something for 50 cents or for 100,000, most people are going to go for the 50 cent without asking a question, why is this thing over $100,000? And then we get the actual news all the time about what's actually happening with Bitcoin and who's buying up all the Bitcoin and why the institutions are so desperate to have all of it right now. Then it makes a lot more sense with the idea that Bitcoin will outvalue real estate, and simply by actually holding the Bitcoin, you'll receive more of a return from holding the Bitcoin than the actual real estate. The valuation of Bitcoin has risen 30 times higher than any real estate that you could have actually purchased. There was never a chance in any reality that you could have over the last 6 years purchased a property equivalent wise for $1,000 and then got to $109,000 for that exact same property. You were buying no kind of property in any way, shape, or form that did a 100x in value in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Me and my friends are really into real estate. I love real estate. It's like a core thing for me. But I've sat there sometimes, me and my friends have discussed at length, not even just for Bitcoin, but for other coins as well, where we go, the idea of buying real estate is quite fascinating. You buy it, you hold it, it's yours, but then you need insurance for it. There's always this fear, at least in the back of my mind. What if something happens to the apartment? What if I put someone into the apartment and they're not paying the rent? They have no desire to pay it all. What if they destroy the walls? What if something ends up happening to it? It's this kind of like extra thing. And we've gone through the numbers before, and we've realized in most cases, crypto actually is the answer as far as appreciation and also passive income. And this is before Bitcoin has actual on-chain or proper DeFi staking. It was a very interesting article from Forbes where they basically went into all the different ideas of like the actual like risk levels of all of this. The risk that you have for Bitcoin essentially comes down to like its adoption level. How much more will Bitcoin be adopted? But then you also get into this idea of like, well, how many countries are buying it? How many countries are using it? How many countries are mining it? How many institutions are in the space? Why is BlackRock so interested in Bitcoin? Why do all these companies want all the Bitcoin for themselves? And then the actual idea of like a risk on asset begins to lightly fade when you realize how big the actual adoption levels are. And people from BlackRock are anticipating a $50 trillion market cap. It's something I think that people will have to grapple with in the future as we continue to see Bitcoin becoming more adopted. And I give it about 10 years. It's something that people aren't ready to actually have a conversation about, especially people who own hundreds of properties. But eventually when you realize that Bitcoin has completely outpaced any money that you could have kind of made, the money that you're getting from the actual tenant continues to inflate. Even then, the rent will begin to flow into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price goes higher because it's incredibly finite. The valuation of Bitcoin goes up, and mathematical to the US dollar, your property isn't going up by that same exact level. But I think we're going to see a lot more people in the future. And I mean, this is also realistically, if you wanted a cheaper home in the future, this would actually cause it to happen as real estate investors begin to sell off some of their properties to push that money into Bitcoin, and then makes it a lot easier and more affordable for people to afford homes because the valuation of them goes down as more people are selling, but then the valuation of Bitcoin also goes up at the exact same time. So like I said, I know it sounds crazy. We've had a lot of like topics on this channel and the other channel for like a couple of years. And then when people begin to see things happening, it kind of goes, that could actually be a thing. I still believe personally that the big step for the general public is going to be $1 million Bitcoin. I think the public needs to see that Bitcoin is so out of reach for them. And that's when they begin to start buying more Bitcoin. But it will be fascinating to see if Larry Fink, Novogratz, or Michael Saylor's predictions come true. All of them believing at some point Bitcoin is going to hit 10 million, 15 million. And I think Michael Saylor said by 2040, he was expecting a 38 million. I forgot the number, something dollar Bitcoin. Yeah, it'll be fascinating. Like think about it. Imagine the idea. 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, if someone told you to buy numbers on a screen, you would have thought they were crazy. And now look at you. You're buying numbers on a screen as an actual investment. Some of you buying it as like an actual long-term investment. Imagine the idea of gold not really being an investment, but just something kind of shiny that people like just wear. And it's not put into warehouses and stuff like that. One of also, if you missed the other video, one of the ideas for how the United States is going to actually purchase a lot of Bitcoin is by selling off some of their gold to buy Bitcoin. That was one of the proposals, selling off several $billion so that they could buy the allotted amount of Bitcoin that they needed per year. Now imagine in the future, the idea of real estate as an asset class goes like, yeah, you can definitely make money from it, but why aren't you just holding and buying Bitcoin? It's incredibly scarce. It's more scarce than real estate. No. You don't have to buy an entire coin. You buy fragments of it, then you put it onto a website or onto your computer, and you make passive income every single day. It's a weird thing to think about, but this is, I think, exactly where we're going. Yeah, bit of a different video, a very weird Forbes article. It's literally called Bitcoin or Real Estate. It's time to change how we look at wealth. I always say rich people keep signaling to each other, and they do it all the time. There's a reason why this Forbes article is on Forbes and not some other website about like cooking instructions or something. This is a signal to rich people that things are rapidly changing. Anywho, I hope you've all enjoyed. Hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting, and I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.